Hello and welcome to Techie Chat. So this really is a follow-up to installing FreeBSD 14 in 5. It's basically what I did next. So I thought I would give Cinnamon a try. Now Cinnamon on FreeBSD has generally had a bit of a bad press. The general consensus of Cinnamon on FreeBSD so far is that it hasn't really been good enough. However, there were updates made on January the 13th, so I thought I would give it a go and just see if I could get it up and running. But I've got to admit that having run package install Cinnamon and trying it out for the first time, it really wasn't a great experience. The desktop ran very sluggishly. Memory usage was all over the place, and I was nearly going to ditch this review. However, after persevering and running with it for a few days now, I managed to get it to a fairly decent level. So let's go through what I did to get there in the end with Cinnamon Desktop on FreeBSD 14. Firstly, installation, and you can find these steps in detail on the freebsd.org website under Configure Cinnamon, section 8.2.5.2, if you want to know. And they really are great instructions on getting Cinnamon up and running. So firstly, you have to add this line to FS tab, and once that gets added, you also need to make sure that dbus is enabled. The dbus daemon is for message and hardware abstraction, and Cinnamon relies on that. And then you also, and this is quite key, you need to install the Light DM. That's a different type of display manager, essentially, mainly seen in Linux desktop environments. However, you can obviously run it on FreeBSD as well. I haven't really used Light Display Manager before, but yeah, so I just went ahead and installed that using the package install lightdm -gtk-greeter, and then I enabled it in rc.conf. rc.conf, if you remember my other videos on FreeBSD, is the running configuration. So let's just take a look at rc.conf now. So this is my rc.conf. Hopefully you can see that. Let's just make it a bit bigger. All right, so rc.conf, let's minimize that. So when I installed FreeBSD, I had PowerD enabled by default. You saw me do that when I installed FreeBSD in 5 minutes. But further to that, you obviously have the dbus enable now, and you also have lightdm enable. And I've also added this configuration, and that really is but mainly to add the Intel driver for the Intel graphics card that I have in this laptop. And I'll show you why. So let's just launch the file manager here. Have a look. So, all right. So hopefully you can see this. Let's see if I can zoom in a bit. There we go. So when I had installed Cinnamon initially and gone through all those steps, I noticed that the system was still pretty sluggish. And what I found here was that Cinnamon itself was running at a very high CPU percentage. 32.2% of the CPU was being used by Cinnamon. And even though Cinnamon, as you can see from this screenshot, looked absolutely fine, the drop shadows were there on the windows, etc. Basically, it was Cinnamon was just using up too much CPU. So let me just see if I've got the right screenshot here. Here we go. So I researched this and found out that the probable reason for Cinnamon using so much CPU was because of the video driver. And indeed, once I had added the video driver to rc.conf, so I got that loaded here, so i915kms.ko. Once I'd added the Intel graphics driver to FreeBSD and had then loaded that using this command here in my rc.conf, things were very different. As you can see here, if we just look now, you can see it's gone down from 30% to 1.7% CPU, which is a massive difference, and that was just from installing the correct graphics driver for the environment. So that made a huge difference to the desktop environment and how it runs. And in fact, if we go to HTOP now, what you will see is a lot of memory being used because I'm recording the audio, I'm recording the desktop, and I've got Firefox open. So as you can see, it's quite high memory usage at the moment. But you can see even with those things running, Cinnamon Replace, or the Cinnamon desktop, is using just 0.2, 0.3% of CPU. Going back here, obviously I've customized the desktop here. I've installed a theme as well on Cinnamon, and I think it looks pretty nice. I've just moved the panel for Cinnamon up to the top here. I haven't gone with the dock at this stage. I'm at that point where I'm kind of questioning the purpose of docks, because it feels like I can do everything I need to do just through the panel. So I've just moved it to the top there. As you can see, the Cinnamon menu on the panel is all present and correct. The icons using the Beauty Line icon theme look pretty nice and modern, if you like that sort of colourful look. And also it's consistent as well, so it works all the way through the system. So you can see every application has a Beauty Line icon next to it. There isn't any ones that are left out and look a bit strange because they're still running the standard icon theme. I'm running Sakura as my terminal emulator. I'm sort of split on whether I like Sakura or not. If you look at HTOP, and I've been looking at HTOP a lot whilst I've been running Cinnamon, I have noticed that occasionally Sakura does take up quite a bit of RAM, but I do like the way that you can create multiple tabs and name those tabs as well, which has come in useful for the video. So I'm running Sakura. You can see how much memory I currently am using. Obviously that would be a lot less if I wasn't recording in OBS at the same time. But let's go through some other aspects of the configuration. So in my loader.conf, now if you also remember from my previous videos, and if you watch any of the RoboNuggy episodes about FreeBSD, then you will know that there are three main configuration files that you tend to get to grips with when installing FreeBSD and installing a desktop environment, and that is loader.conf, rc.conf, and sysctl.conf. Boot/loader.conf is what's loaded up at boot. rc.conf is the running configuration, and sysctl is the system control. So just going through my loader.conf on this system, as you can see, I've gone with installing Cinnamon myself. I haven't gone through the desktop installer, so you don't get the additional bits and pieces that desktop installer, even though very good, does leave in your configuration after running through the installation. My additional configuration, I've tried to mark it up here so that I can sort of highlight it. My additional configuration was just simply auto boot delay is set to 3, just to speed things along during the boot sequence. ACPI IBM load equals yes, because I'm running a ThinkPad, and this helps with things like getting the keyboard backlight working and things like that. And asynchronous input output, which just helps with the desktop responsiveness and the overall responsiveness of the desktop whilst using it. And that's the only things I've really added into boot/loader.conf there, that just those three things. Okay, running configuration is a little bit more complex and probably has the most extra configuration in there. As I highlighted earlier, dbus is enabled. It needs to be enabled for Cinnamon to run, and the light desktop manager has also been enabled as well in the rc.conf. What I will say about light DM is that it isn't as light as, say, XDM or Slim. If you've watched my other FreeBSD episodes, then you will see that the memory usage and CPU usage is really quite low, and actually at the moment it's quite high on this desktop. And that's not all down to light desktop manager, but it's certainly a lot heavier than things like XDM or Slim as a desktop manager. But it does do the job, and it does have a very nice login screen. It looks very modern. Everything here on the desktop actually feels like a modern desktop. In some ways quite very similar to running something like Linux Mint. And that would be understandable because Linux Mint runs Cinnamon. Then I have my wireless configuration, and wireless works absolutely fine. I've actually, up here, I've got my network manager. That's the other thing I should point out as well, is that when I initially installed Cinnamon on my FreeBSD install, I did get an error regarding the network manager, and that was easily resolved. Let me show you how I sorted that out. So if we click on the menu icon up here and we just go through applications, you've got the settings, system settings here, and let's just minimize that, maximize that. All right, so in Cinnamon we've got a few different things. We have desklets, applets, and extensions. So if we click on extensions, you can download certain extensions like transparent panels, but what I've found, even though these do seem to work, transparent panel does indeed make this panel transparent, which looks really nice. It does really push the CPU and memory usage up. So I haven't got any extensions enabled in there. If we go to applets, the applet that I needed to disable to stop the error message from coming up was Network Manager. The Network Manager applet, that was actually causing an error message, and the way that I could see that was by using a Cinnamon shortcut. Type LG for log, and something called Melange comes up. Now Melange is a sort of hidden Cinnamon debugger, if you like, that runs in the background. I click on log here, and that shows me exactly what happened when Cinnamon started and if there are any issues with Cinnamon running. I'm not sure if that will come out very well on the video because it's a very sort of transparent green on there, but Melange is really very useful if you run into any problems on Cinnamon, particularly if you're running it on a FreeBSD install like I am. So I used this tool and I found that something called NM, which when I looked it up on Google turned out to be Network Manager, essentially is incompatible or not working with FreeBSD 14. So once I'd unticked that, disabled that, the error message went away. And actually, once I'd installed the Network Dash Manager on FreeBSD, I got my network manager back, and it works brilliantly. Everything connects okay. The wireless, as you can see, is present. I'm currently plugged into wired, but I can switch to wireless if I want to. Actually, it is already connected, as you can see there. So yeah, the network manager works really well within Cinnamon, and the icon and everything else is present. So coming back to Sakura Terminal, and we've looked at RC, we've been looking at rc.conf. I also have Fuse, Core Temp and CPU Control or CTL enabled. I have Webcam D loaded, and I'm also using Ubuntu Enable for Linux compatibility. Not sure if I need that or not. I've just put it in there because Cinnamon is mainly developed on a Linux platform, so I wasn't sure if maybe I might need some sort of Linux compatibility from the Linux emulator in FreeBSD. So I wasn't sure if I needed that or not. Under sysctl.conf, so just two things here, bfs.usermount equals 1 to allow me to mount devices, and then kern.shed.preempt underscore thrash equals 224. This improves FreeBSD's desktop performance and responsiveness. Essentially, FreeBSD by default is set up to be as responsive as required for a server environment. But when running a desktop, you just need to add this line into sysctl just to ensure that the desktop responsiveness is up to scratch. So those are the three main files. Those are the things I've added into my FreeBSD and Cinnamon setup here. As you can see, things are running fairly smoothly. Indeed, I am recording this video using OBS. I have Kdenlive installed, and I'll be putting this video together using Kdenlive on here. And so far so good. I've been running it for a couple of days now. It runs pretty well. A couple of odd bits and pieces. For example, system info just doesn't work, but then I don't really need it. I'd like to find out a way of just removing system info if it's not going to work on FreeBSD. I could run something like NeoFetch and get the same information, if not more information. Also, users and groups doesn't work, but those two things I'm not really that bothered about. I've added my preferred applications here as well. And the rest of the system really does work very well. Everything works as expected. My only criticism, if any, of the Cinnamon environment is it's not particularly clear how to get it to this level. In terms of when you first install it, it's a pretty rough experience. You really do have to work at it to get it to a level where it's usable as a desktop. It's still not as responsive as running a pure window manager, or indeed not as responsive, I would say, as running something like KDE. However, it is a very pleasant desktop experience, and if you are looking for a desktop experience that gives you that kind of Linux Mint type feels, and indeed you can even install a Linux Mint type theme as well if you wanted to really get that Linux Mint feel, then you can do that. So whilst CPU and memory usage is fairly high for a desktop environment on FreeBSD, it is still a very usable and decent experience, and if you have the hardware to run it, and you're not too worried about wasted memory and CPU, then it's a very decent desktop experience. Things that I didn't expect to work and do work, things like tiling, etc., they work really well. And that's, you can see the animations there, it all works really nicely. All of this really hinges on being able to install things like the Light DM. That Cinnamon really is dependent on Light Desktop Manager, as well as the Intel video driver. The correct video driver needs to be installed as well, otherwise you might get it up and running, but the Cinnamon -- replace or Cinnamon desktop will be running away with the CPU and memory. Overall, it's a very nice desktop, but if perhaps still a little too heavy, I think with some extra tweaks from the Cinnamon team and FreeBSD teams, this could be a very, very good desktop. It just needs some extra smoothing out to get things up and running in Cinnamon correctly. So I'm looking forward to the next version of Cinnamon. We'll see if they do indeed manage to get things running correctly in FreeBSD. Overall, Cinnamon at the moment in its current form is a perfectly usable desktop on FreeBSD. So that's been my look at Cinnamon 5.4.9 on FreeBSD 14. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you have, then please click on like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching.